My next guest, though, is about to blow your mind, and not in a good way. This is going to be very disappointing. Bill D'Agostino's coming back on from one of my favorite websites, newsbusters.org, because this headline almost knocked me out of my chair. Welcome back, Bill. It says only 24% of likely voters know Charlie Kirk's killer is left-wing.
Yeah.
How does that happen, Bill? How?
I thought I was cynical, but I mean, we were even shocked by this. I'd seen a lot of people kind of talking like they thought that he was like a right-wing guy, especially, left wingers generally. And so I saw that it wasn't being polled anywhere. Like, that wasn't a question anybody was asking. So we organized something with the McLaughlin and Associates polling group, and they included our question in their monthly cycle that they do. And yeah, I mean, I was expecting the results to be disappointing, like bad, but I did not expect this bad. I mean, it's genuinely a testament to media malfeasance that the numbers are as low as they are.
Well, I think the WBAP audience is the one that needs to hear this the most, because I hear too much from people calling in or writing me Facebook messages saying, I don't understand how people vote for this guy, or I don't understand how people can support this, or I don't understand why people think this way or hate Trump, or think. This is why. They don't know. They don't know what's going on. They know a few headlines. They know what CNN tells them. They know what they see on their Facebook feed or their Instagram feed, but they don't know what you know.
Right. It's entirely a result of an information and social ecosystem that is like completely devoid from what you or I or many of your listeners would consider normal, factual, real world. And I mean, so much of it is not just about what they were saying about Tyler Robinson, the man who allegedly shot Kirk. It's also what they haven't been saying, because we actually found that 27%, that was the most the highest number for any answer to the poll question.
The plurality.
27%. Yeah, the plurality. Thank you. Yeah, word was on the tip of my tongue. The plurality of people didn't know what his ideology was. That was the most common answer. And unfortunately, right wing was 22%, so pretty bad, more than a fifth. But the fact that over a quarter of people don't even want to venture a guess as to what the guy who shot Charlie Kirk thinks about the world, right, is I think kind of evidence that the media swept the story under the rug as quickly as they could. Right? They maybe a couple of times uncomfortably acknowledged that, yeah, okay, maybe he does seem to be left wing. But then the second Jimmy Kimmel was suspended for lying about Tyler Robinson's politics, that immediately became the story for the media. It was something for them to glom onto and stop talking about Charlie Kirk.
Look at and give him credit, my producer for the James Show. That was one of the first things he thought of when I brought this up before the show. Like, wait, didn't Jimmy Kimmel get suspended for that?
Yeah. We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Well, it worked. That lie has now worked. Propaganda works, Bill.
Right. And so Jimmy Kimmel's got like 19 writers on his show, I think. So where are he and they getting all of their news from? I would suspect probably Blue Sky, right? Probably MSNBC type places, right? So it's I guess MS now, right? That still feels weird.
Well, but the guys that come on before me call it M Snow, and I'm sticking with that because that's what it looks like when they put it on TV. It looks like M Snow.
That's good. I've been taking pains to remind myself to, whenever I talk about NBC Now, refer to them as MS Now sister network NBC, because I think the whole point of this rebrand was to divorce NBC in people's brains from MSNBC. So. I don't want to let them get away with that. They're
I think they got
off the stench that easy.
I think they got corporately divorced from NBC, and that was part of the reason for the name change. Bill D'Agostino, I'm going to ask a possible question because I get asked this all the time. What do we do about that? How do we change this? How do we make people be more informed?
It's difficult, right? If you're not somebody with a platform, if it's not like your profession, if it's not something that you work in, proselytizing can feel uncomfortable, right? And so I think that the best way to go about it is to gently encourage people to seek out this or that news source that you recommend, right? Maybe just a friendly recommendation. Oh, they talked about this thing that you that you liked. I thought maybe you'd enjoy them, right? Try to set people up for situations where they will kind of stumble into a better information ecosystem than whatever they're currently consuming. And if somebody seems interested in a political topic but doesn't seem to know what they're talking about, I mean, I depending on your relationship with somebody, yeah, push back if it's appropriate to do so. Right, obviously not if it's your boss or something, but I
right.
think your listeners are smart enough to know that without me saying it.
All right, if you have time, I highly encourage you to go check out Bill D'Agostino, my guest here, his article on newsbusters.org. I go there before every show for prep because you guys do such a good job keeping track of the media. I really appreciate y'all's hard work. You do great stuff. We're being joined by one of the newest members of the White House press corps, Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express, calling in. Hey, Chris, how's it going in the White House today?
All good, James, other than it being very cold here today.
What's the temperature there?
Oh, it's got to be in the low 40s, but the wind's blowing. I left my jacket and my overcoat in the hotel room, so it's a little chilly.
All right, so the big talk in D.C. today, what would you say the top story is in the press poll?
Well, the mainstream press poll, of course, is completely focused on Pete Hegseth and these drug boat strikes, and whether or not the drug boat strikes were too much, that they actually went back a second at a time and killed some folks that whose vehicles already been disabled. And then, of course, the other big story is the rest of the January 6th bomber, or at least the alleged January 6th bomber.
All right. So what did we learn about the January 6th bomber? Who is this guy?
I can't tell you that I know a whole lot so far. There's been a couple of fits and starts with respect to this story, already, and, just in the past year here. And so, I from a news point of view, I kind of take let's wait and see what the real story here is point of view. His name is Brian Jerome Cole. He's 30. He's from Northern Virginia. Evidently, they found evidence, including cell phone data, purchasing records, etc. And they've had the evidence actually in hand because he was a subject, I guess, early in the investigation. So it's not clear yet, why he became a new, fresh, hot subject, unless as a result of some of the pressure that they were getting to finally identify this individual, they went back through, their previous suspects. And so, there are reports that, he appeared to be an extremist. There's reports that he's Antifa affiliated, but we haven't been able to confirm any of that yet. And we won't until we get more information.
Well, the thing that's suspicious about this, and Dan Bongino talked about it on his show that was before mine for all that time until he got into the FBI. The timing on this is interesting. We had this information since probably January 7th, 2021. Why are we just finding out about it almost 5 years later?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of questions, and the timing's also interesting in the respect that there were some reasonably credible reports. I think we shared one that the suspect had been potentially identified through video evidence and facial recognition as a Capitol Police officer, and that was just a couple of weeks ago.
Whoa!
And so I'm telling you, the one thing about being in this place up here in DC is you hear some crazy things, and depending on who you talk to, of course, you get a different perspective on the story. And by the way, this segues back really to the Venezuelan story. And you see these competing narratives being promoted in the media, and it can be challenging at times, even when you're dealing with credible news sources, to get to the truth of a story.
So how bad is the bias in the White House press corps?
Well, what I would tell you, I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I mean, we're obviously the only Texas-owned outlet in that room. It's the Washington Post and the New York Times and the LA Times and CNN. I mean, yeah, Fox in there, of course. But outside of Fox and OAN, I still have yet to see the Newsmax reporter, but I assume there is one here. There's not a lot of balance, editorial balance. And, it struck me because it's palpable. I mean, you start to understand just how dominant the far left, what I call lying legacy media is. And I mean, in that room are individuals that disseminate and interpret, what the most important people in our federal government are providing them in terms of updates every day. And so it's pretty shocking in that respect.
So did you stop by Ilhan Omar's office and tell her I said hi?
I tried that the other day.
Okay.
It was the first day I was here. I went by her office. Happened to be down the hall from another congressional rep I was visiting with, Brandon Gill. This was literally during the weekly press conference that they were having in the White House. I had just gotten to town, so I was unable to make that one, and her door was locked. And of course, in that press conference, they were discussing the alleged Somali crime and corruption, and vote harvesting up in her district in Minnesota that Tim Walz has now been tied to. So it was interesting that she wasn't making herself or her office available for visits at that time.
All right. So what's on the agenda for tonight? Is there any more Christmas parties you've been invited to?
I'm not going to any Christmas parties tonight. I will be doing a live interview with Grant Sitchfield from Real America's Voice. Real America's Voice, correct?
Isn't he out of this area? Isn't he like in Irving or something? Isn't he a Dallasite or North Texan?
He definitely was originally, and he was here for a long time. I actually don't know. He might be in Florida or California these days. I'm not sure, but I'll be in the studio. I don't expect him to be there. I expect to be broadcasting remotely, and that's at 6 p.m. Central.
All right. Well, good stuff. I'll try and get you for another live report from the White House tomorrow if you don't mind. But in the meantime, go get back to work, Chris.
All right. Thanks so much. Y'all have a great day.
The only Texan in the White House press pool, Chris Putnam. Here is a soundbite that's going to stick with you. Erica Kirk was at some forum this week hosted by the New York Times. I don't know what she was doing there, except Scott Bessent was there, our Treasury Secretary. So this apparently wasn't an especially partisan event. But she was asked to explain why do you think socialists and the left and Zoran Mamdani do so good with female voters? And so she talks about it.
I was going to ask you, actually, what do you make of Mamdani here in New York? And the reason I ask is he was somebody who really actually was able to persuade the younger voter. Mm-hmm. I mean, he really captured, but obviously on the complete opposite end, if you will, of where someone like Charlie would have been.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting because I lived in Manhattan for a while and I loved this city. I'm going to come at this from a female voter because a high percentage of his voters were female. I think there's a tendency, especially when you live in a city like Manhattan, where, again, you are so career-driven and you almost look to the government as a form of replacement for certain things, relationship-wise even. So you see things a little bit differently. What I don't want to have happen is young women in the city look to the government as a solution to put off having a family or a marriage because you're relying on the government to support you instead of being united with the husband where you can support yourself and your husband can support and you can guys all combine together. But I just find it so ironic and so interesting that a heavy percentage of the individuals that voted for him were female.
Okay, there's a couple of tweaks I would like to make to that. The general premise is she's totally correct. I just don't think she's broad enough in her diagnosis or indictment, however you want to see it. But she's correct. There's a lot of women who, especially in the career-minded, driven area of Manhattan, New York, that see government as sort of their partner. If I need help paying the rent, government. If I need help putting food on the table, government. If I need a ride from point A to point B, government. But I think she's being a little narrow here because on the James Show, I say the same thing quite often with just a little bit of difference. I don't think government's necessarily meant to replace husbands as it's meant to replace dads, which isn't much of a distinction, but it kind of broadens it out for so many of the arguments that are put in front of you. It's like, well, what about the children? If we cut food stamps or free lunch programs, how are the kids going to get food? Now, that's your dad's job. If a kid's starving, before you come get money from me, why don't you go have a chat with their dad? Hey, why are you letting your kids starve? If the dad's not around, I think we've found our first problem. But so many of these government programs, from public transportation to DART, well, how's my kid going to get a ride to work or go to soccer practice or go to school? That's dad's problem. That's something parents are supposed to take care of. Well, how are we, without Section 8 or public housing, how do we put a roof over our head? Dad. Well, without public schools, how are we going to educate our dad? Dad's the answer to almost all of these questions. Oh, you don't need gun control to be safe in America. You need a dad. And when you look at the communities that are failing, that have problems with addiction and prostitution and poverty and crime, you know what they don't have a lot of? Dads. That's not just a coincidence. So I like that. Some people see government as a force for good. I see as the people who believe that, you're probably well-intended. It's just not working, and no one has the guts to tell you it's not working because it's not a fun solution. I wish you could just go out there and have promiscuous sex and never have to think about it, never have to develop a nuclear family, and not ever have to worry about raising kids or how you're going to feed them or how you're going to put a roof over their head or how you're going to educate them. But some people in our society are already living life that way, and it's going quite poorly for them. So, yeah, I think she's really on to something. I just have a feeling that message isn't getting out because, as you heard like 3 segments ago, only 24% of likely voters know that the guy who assassinated Erica Kirk's husband was from the left wing. And it seems like the most obvious answer. Charlie Kirk was an inherently political animal of the right wing. Who else would have a motive to kill him? What, was he sleeping with somebody's wife? Did he owe some Venezuelan cartels boat money? Is that what... It's just sad. It's sad because it's not working. I wish it did work. But I always like to put some of these questions through a different prism. It's like, okay, there's nothing wrong with being gay or being childless or choosing to not have kids or whatever, the sort of feminist Team Blue preference is for alternative lifestyles. But if everybody lived that lifestyle, what would happen? Human beings would go extinct in 100 years. If everyone lived life the way you and I preferred and followed our traditional mores and values, what would happen? Human beings would flourish. How do we know? All of human history, especially the last 249 years, prove that. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next on The James Show, we got to talk about these Venezuelan boat strikes. This is not about drugs, folks. And the Guns N' Roses World Tour coming to Globe Life Field September 9th. Get tickets and information at livenation.com. Or you can listen to the WBAP Morning Show tomorrow to find out how you can win tickets to Guns N' Roses. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.